Welcome to the 2018 Video Game Awards, hosted by Cody Goff and Jonathan Martin, hosts of Game Life Balance U.S. On this episode, we'll award video games with Blonde Jonah Hill, Jeff Keighley, Assassin's Creed, and
a horse. It's Red Dead. Red Dead horses.
Is it the Red Dead horse?
And Red Dead horses. I had to pop out my chat. I wanna start. By the way, everybody, I'm Jonathan Martin, one of the hosts of Game Life Balance U.S., a podcast that you are currently listening to. This is my co-host Cody Goff, also a host. That is my co-host that hosts this show, Game Life Balance U.S., a podcast by two hosts. I just want to apologize ahead of time. I'm battling illness. I mean, it's like it's that time of year, you know. And as you know from listening to our last episode, we just had our second kid, and
John and
one of
his
the things
wife,
that happens,
not me and John, not John and me.
Well, we could have too.
Yeah,
it's 2018.
But
it's 2018.
I know, that's why I'm specifying.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that kind of gets told to you in passing is like you're going to get sick a lot when you have a kid. And when we had our first kiddo, that totally did happen a lot. But ever since I got through all of the plagues of the first like 2 years of his life, I basically haven't gotten sick since. I think because my body just, you know, is immune to basically every bacteria and virus that has ever existed, because they all passed through him at one point. But for whatever reason, I got sick. The entire household was sick last week, and then it was my turn. So this week has been a struggle, a rough struggle. I even went to the doctor and got an antibiotic style struggle. So I apologize if I'm a little congested. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of sinus pressure. I got that sinus thing going on.
Well, don't feel any pressure to sound good because most people skip the parts where you talk anyway.
That seems like it'd make for a really awkward podcast.
Yeah, and yet here we are at the 2018 Video Game Awards. What's first, John? Best racing game or best immersive sandbox game?
I don't think I've played either of those this year, so I am probably not the most qualified.
Good thing that our podcast is called Unqualified Gamers.
So Cody brings that up because we are currently recording during the
2018 Video Game Awards.
It's weird. We have a similar number of viewers right now. I don't know how that's possible, but yeah, it's almost split 50-50 here between the two of us. So if we can manage to go longer than this show, which I believe is a 3-hour show, we should be able to kind of, I think we should be able to siphon off most of those viewers by the end.
Yeah. So the night of this recording, before we'll get into actual our favorite video games shortly. But for some background, tonight is literally the only night I have free the rest of 2018. So I told John we had a podcast tonight. I had no idea the Video Game Awards were going to be also occurring tonight, nor that they existed. In fact, I was completely unaware of the Video Game Awards.
This is actually the 5th year that the Video Games Awards have been going on.
Yeah,
they've only
been made up.
Bigger. They've been getting bigger year to year. So it's actually kind of surprising you haven't heard of them. They have actually had some. They always do world premieres at them now, and they've had some significant world premieres in the past. So there's supposedly going to be a Dragon Age premiere tonight at some point, which is a fantastic series that I love. So,
well, wait till the listener hears what we're going to premiere on our podcast tonight.
You didn't tell me we had a world premiere, but that's very exciting for me. Yeah. So, listener, as you know, we took a hiatus for a couple of months. So, we just dropped
5 months. We
dropped that first episode.
In fact, you took a hiatus for 5 months. I continued to post episodes.
We dropped that first episode today, and it was awesome. And then we're going to take a hiatus after this episode because Cody is so busy over the next month and a half. So we'll be back again maybe in 5 months. Who knows? We'll see.
We will be back in January 2019 with another brand new episode of Game Life Balance U.S., the United States Imperialist Capitalist Economist Edition of the Game Life Balance brand, owned and operated by Game Life Balance Australia and their intern, Chad. who I heard sadly died horribly in some kind of freak accident involving AC and a katana. I don't know the full story. I'm just relaying information to you.
To be fair, his name was Chad.
Also true. Yeah, that's true. Well, we are going to talk about our favorite games of 2018 because, one, we still haven't played any SNES Classic games, which we'll resume doing next year.
Yep.
And two, all we talked about was life stuff last time. And
yeah,
I'm sick of that.
And before we continue, yeah, because we are, I mean, at our heart, we are a video game podcast. We love video games. It's just
we're a lifestyle podcast, I thought.
Well, we're a lifestyle podcast that talks, you know, like our main topic of interest is video games in terms of like the hobby that we participate in. And so I will say, though, I want to just preface this whole conversation we're about to have by saying, when we say the best games of 2018 per Game Life Balance, what we actually mean are the best games that we played in 2018. There's an important caveat because very frequently Cody and I will play games from many years ago because we are not maybe as up to date with the most current games. So it is important to note that it is the games that we played this year, not necessarily games that released this year.
Yeah, but it's also important to note because a lot of these games, let's say they came out a few years ago, one, it tells you they're still fun and they still hold up.
Yep.
Right? Because like gameplay evolves over time, and you might see a game and think, oh, well, that game got a lot of hype in 2015, but is it still any good? And it's validating if we have it on the top list to say, hey, yeah, it was really good this year. So like, don't feel like you missed the boat. And not only can you still play it, but you can probably get it for a lot cheaper than it was when it first came out. So there's some advantages to the way that we do this.
And that's most of the time why we're talking about these games, is because a lot of times we've picked them up on some sort of sale.
Also that. And I will also preface my list by saying that the number one favorite game on my list is being released in about 3 hours and 38 minutes and will be downloaded to my Nintendo Switch, and I will be playing Smash Brothers Ultimate nonstop for the rest of the year. However,
did you just give it away? I think you just gave it away.
I did seriously consider trying to move something in my schedule to record next week just to have Smash Brothers Ultimate on the list, but I mean, look,
it's going to be the best game ever made. It'll be the best game ever made. Everybody knows that.
Like, I mean, I'm so upset that I don't have more free time to play it immediately tomorrow or tonight at midnight, but that's neither here nor there. So we each picked 3 top games. Are these in any particular order? Did you order yours?
I did not, but I can very quickly. So
you don't need. I didn't order mine either.
Yeah,
like at all.
Yeah, I mean, we have I have a list of games that I really enjoyed that I played this year, and I had played many more games than this. But these are the ones that kind of came to mind when I was thinking, what were the games that I liked the most, right? When I was talking about games this year.
I hadn't played a lot of games. In fact, when I made my list, I came up with 8 games, and they may be the only 8 games I played this year.
Well, that's perfect. Those are the top 8 games you played.
I'm only giving you the top 3.
Okay. So we're starting with number 3.
Oh, well, you go. What,
am I going to start with number 3? Well, no, because
I
pitched it to you. That was like that was the pitch for you to take it from me. Is that what they call it in radio? Pitching and then catching? I'm trying to say I pitched to you, the catcher, who caught that, who was then supposed to run with it, roll with it, ride with it.
No, none of those are real things. So I'm going to tell you my runner-up, because we always have to have a runner-up.
Sure, so this is number 4. This is number 4.
It's the runner-up.
Okay.
It's not necessarily number 4, but it is the runner-up.
Okay.
All right, my runner-up is Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. Now, this is a weird thing to say, but I should talk about this a little bit. Final Fantasy XIV is the first massively multiplayer online role-playing game I've played, the first MMORPG. I've talked about it on a zillion episodes. We know this. I love it. But hey, it's been a journey for me because, like, John, you've told me that these MMOs, the game doesn't really start until you've completed the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is you play in apparently some MMOs, including 14. You play the storyline. You get characters up some levels, you know, clear main quests and kind of know the ropes, and then you do some dungeons, then you do some advanced dungeon raids, and then you get to the, like, really difficult content. And The whole structure of an MMO is get to the end game content, is what that is. Nothing's unlockable until you've finished everything else.
Which is usually at the max. I mean, that's at the max level. That is when you reach max level.
Yeah, the max available level. And then you take these challenge battles or dungeons or whatever, and you play them over and over and over again. You grind them, because at the end you get a certain type of currency or special items that randomly drop, and you can use that to get really powerful gear. And gear is like the big thing that you go for in these games, right?
I mean, what else would you? I mean, you're outfitting a character. What else would you be looking for? You know, I mean, that's what you're looking for,
right? So like that's literally what MMOs are. I had never gotten an end game because even after like 3 years of playing the game, I never reached max level. And over the last few months, since we've been podcasting, I now have max level with not one but two characters, and I'm kind of close to a third character at max level. So now I'm experiencing the end game. And I want to talk about that experience briefly because I love the storyline of Final Fantasy XIV. Like all Final Fantasy games,
it's excellent.
It's really good story, right? And have you played any of Heavensward? Or
yeah,
no?
I played a lot of Heavensward.
Okay, awesome. So Heavensward, I think, was the pinnacle of the story. I think that's the best part.
Is it Heaven's Ward or Heaven's Word, like looking Heavensward?
It's Heaven's Ward.
So like a place. Because a ward is a place, so it's Heaven's Ward.
You know, I don't.
I think it's Heaven's Word. I think it's like you're looking Heaven's Word because it's all about dragons.
That's what I thought. Well, I think it's a play on words because the Heaven's Ward is also the name of a knight contingent.
The Heaven's Sword, the weapon you use to slay.
Nope, there's not that, but it's the Heaven's Ward. They ward away the dragon.
Anyway, I played a good. I think I got up to like level 68. Was that 58? 58 probably in Heaven's Word.
60's max level in Heaven's Ward.
So I got up to level 58.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Cool. Then.
Played a good amount of it.
So phenomenal story. Really loved it.
It was really good.
Stormblood does not have nearly as good a story. It's a bit more of a kind of a straight thing. It's still excellent though. Like every time I play this game, like I don't know, the bar keeps getting so high. You know, I'll say something like Heaven's Ward had a really fantastic story, and then I think about any side quest or any piece of dialogue or any fetch quest or basically anything I do in this game, it's just written so well. But it's just so great. But now that I'm at the end game, it's an interesting place to be because I don't know that I love MMO end game content, but I also know that I'm doing it wrong. So let me explain that. I'm at the end game and I can play the max level dungeons. That's great. And then there's some battles. Let's say you fight Omega Escape or like Kefka is a boss that you fight in this from Final Fantasy VI. Well, I can fight him over and over again, and these are like reasonably difficult things that are max level. But then there is an extreme version of these battles and a savage tier. And
so there's like multiple versions of these battles.
There are. So if I go on YouTube and I watch to give you an idea, if you've never played these games, the difficulty comes in like learning the patterns of the bosses so that you don't get killed in one hit and you can continually do damage while running around and dodging things, anticipating what the boss will do next. Some things require you to communicate with partners. Like if you're tethered to another person, you either are supposed to run next to each other or far apart, but the game doesn't just like spell this out for you. You have to know, oh, okay, I'm tethered to somebody. Now I have to run over to them or I have to run away from them. And if you don't know the mechanics, they're called mechanics, then you die, other people die. It's really bad. Now, most boss battles basically in this game, I can watch a YouTube video that's 3 to 4 minutes long and get an outline of basically all of the mechanics. That's pretty reasonable. And they talk pretty fast. There's a handful you got to learn. Some of them are just run out of the way. They're easy. Some are complicated. If I play a Savage one, the YouTube tutorial videos for the Savage raids are 15 minutes long. So you are learning 4 to 5 times the amount of mechanics.
Because there's all mechanics, right? That's an entire 15 minutes of different mechanics. Is that right?
Yes.
That's pretty significant.
It's just talking through it really fast. Now, I do think it would be fun to practice with a group and try to learn the mechanics and fight one of these savage things. And I have a feeling that the sense of accomplishment after beating a savage enemy and with all the things that go into it, knowing the mechanics, doing your rotation, using your abilities in the right order so they do the max amount of damage, and this sensation would feel phenomenal. Is this right? You've done this in WoW, right?
So in WoW, we raided. I raided pretty heavily in the second and third expansions, and when we were pushing content, when you finally got the boss down, it was a big moment. It felt awesome, but that existed in a different time and place in the world of video games, and I don't think that there's just any parallels to it anymore because of how fractured this social landscape of gaming has become. Because in WoW, like, there weren't a lot of other games that were allowing people to group up for any reason, right? And like connect over multiple computers in the same place. But now there's tons of games that do that. So there weren't a lot of places to go to get that kind of experience. So there were a lot more people just playing WoW. And so when you'd have to get 25 people together, but it was really easy to do that in the second and third expansions of WoW because it was the only place to go for that kind of experience. So yeah, Final Fantasy XIV isn't quite the same. A lot of times groups are like pickup groups now, where you just queue up for a dungeon and you get put with 10 other random people, right? And then you go in there. And there's like, I raided with the same people for 2.5 years. And like, I was the raid leader for a long time. And I really got to know those people. I mean, we met up with one a couple of times, from our WoW guild. I mean, it was a different experience. It was a different thing than what MMOs are now.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, yeah. I just wanted to kind of mention my experience and say, I feel like I'm kind of between two spots. The single player experience is really, really fun and really not that particularly challenging. It's a couple challenging fights, but nothing major. And then there's the really savage stuff where you basically have to find a good, smart party that knows what they're doing and kind of know what you're doing and prove that you know what you're doing so you don't get booted right away. And it's like a commitment. Like I would have to commit like a day probably to just grinding for at least a few hours on a Saturday or something. So my schedule does not allow for that now, nor do I know that it necessarily will. So I'm in like a very weird place to be playing an MMO right now. They just announced Shadowbringers, the new expansion for next summer. I'm really looking forward to that. But like I've kind of stepped back on my Final Fantasy XIV playtime quite a bit. And John, I'll say on record, you were right that when you said when I started playing this game, you will not be able to do everything in this game. You were correct. There's no way.
Yeah, that's pretty much every MMO, I think, in my experience.
Yeah. But that said, 14 is still a phenomenal Final Fantasy game. If you've not played it, I don't care if you hate MMOs or you think you hate MMOs, it's worth playing. It's totally incredible. We all have different experiences. Maybe you'll hate the single player stuff. You just want to blaze through and get to the savage stuff. I don't know.
So do I have to have a runner-up?
Yeah.
I would say then, looking at my list, my runner-up would see. I'm between two, but
you can have two runners-up, John.
I would probably say Darkest Dungeon, which I started playing again, and I've talked about that game. The game came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and I have definitely talked about it on this podcast before. But I got really into it again this year, and I'm playing through another kind of adventure of it. And I think the latest DLC just kind of came out a couple of months ago, and I'm pretty sure they're done expanding it. But I started playing that again, and I am in love with that game, and it's a run-based game, which I'm totally into right now. I think that is there are a lot of games coming out that are run-based.
What do you mean run-based? You mean like you?
I mean like you play until you die, and then when you die, you kind of start over. Except in Darkest Dungeon, it's you have a town that you're building up, and that's persistent as you go on an adventure, kind of collect stuff, come back and build up the town. But the concession is it's kind of Lovecraftian in terms of what you're fighting. You've got a bunch of really surly characters that are coming to help you kind of excavate your family's ruins, which were built on top of this portal to some sort of eldritch dimension. And so like you've got brigands and just like they're terrible people that are coming in that you're recruiting. And there's an insanity mechanic where they're getting stressed out more and more, and they can become insane. It's really good. And you go into the dungeon and you kind of, that's really loud. It's really, whatever that is that was really, really loud.
What was really loud? I wasn't doing anything.
Whatever that was. You like go in. Yeah, I don't know. I heard maybe it was a problem with my earphones. Anyway, you you go in and there's a couple of different types of dungeons you can go in. There's short, medium, and long kind of dungeons that you can go through, and you push your party as far into it basically as you can go on each run. If you can complete the run, you get bonuses, and you come back and you use the things that you acquire to then build up your town, be able to further expand your characters, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just like you're building up this giant platoon of people that you then go in parties of 4. And each character has like 7 different abilities that they can have 4 equipped at a time. And they all have each individual ability has different levels to it. They've all got equipment that they use. And so like there's 18 character classes. So there's just this incredible amount of depth in terms of party creation that you can do, which really makes it, I mean, it's like, I was kind of doing some light reading on party composition, and it's like mind breaking the different combinations and compositions of parties that you can do. So I'm totally back into that game again. And then the other runner up would be Civ 6, which I didn't get to play as much of as I would have liked. I will say I liked Civ 5 a whole lot, and Civ 6 was different enough that I didn't fall in love with it right away. But I played probably 3 games of it, and by the 3rd game, I really started to kind of fall into the same pattern that I had with previous Civ games, and I really kind of liked the stuff that they're pushing and doing in this expansion. But it feels just like Civ 5 that it's not going to really be complete until an expansion or 2 comes out, because Civ 5, like when that game first came out, it didn't have a religion in it, and that was a huge part of that game that came with either the 1st or 2nd expansion. And once that came in there, I thought that really expanded things in that game and made that game awesome.
So one expansion for 6, right?
There's one expansion now, and I have that one, but there's a second one coming out in February that deals with like climate change. I think it's called Rising Tides. And I have a feeling that once they expand it with that, once that expansion comes out, it's going to be as good as Civ 5 was for me.
I have on my Amazon wish list for this year Civilization 6 for Nintendo Switch.
Oh, that's right. It did come out for Switch, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I bet it would be a good Switch game too.
Of course, yeah, with the touchscreen and everything, bringing it everywhere. Oh my god! Like I actually brought my laptop on our honeymoon just because I wanted to play Civilization. Nope, I brought it on another trip, like a month before. Anyway,
but you did it to play Civ 6.
I brought my laptop just to play Civ 6 because why not?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Also, pro tip: Civ 6, perfect game to exercise because you can pick like a certain number of turns, like take 4 turns, and then do like 10 push-ups before you take your next turn.
Huh.
It's like it's just a way that I because it's turn-based. You can't really do that. The only other game that I would see you'd be able to do that with is matchmaking, any online matchmaking. So while you're waiting for a match, do like push-ups or a plank or something until the next match starts.
Weird.
But yeah, you can do intervals during Civ 6. So like that's kind of my like get off my butt, like have a relaxing day, but also like get a little bit of movement in kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I gotcha.
Pro tip.
Civ is great. I love Civ. But those would be my 2 runners up.
Awesome. All right. Well, speaking of games that I brought my laptop to play on this same trip, I had downloaded a few different games, and I never played Undertale. Did you play Undertale?
Oh, I did. I loved Undertale so much.
What a phenomenal game! I've only played about 2 hours of it.
Okay.
But it's on my top list, so this will be this is my top 3. On this trip, I played Undertale on my laptop when I decided I didn't feel like playing Civ, and it's just an awesome game.
It's so good. And what do you think of? Do you find it funny?
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
The rating is brilliant. Long story short, it's a role-playing game where you play a character that falls into like a monster world, basically, and you find your way out. But you don't battle in a traditional sense. You can battle, but each battle you have abilities that are tailored to that battle. So let's say you get attacked by a stack of pancakes or something. You might be able to like pour syrup on it, or I don't know, like take a blueberry out of it. I just made that up. I can't remember any specific examples, but you do these random tasks during battle that change with every battle, with every enemy you face, and that placates the opponent. And then you can kind of like mercy them and just like let them live and everything's fine, or you can actually attack and kill. But there's two different like kind of paths you can take to approaching the battles in the game. But the rating is fantastic. The music is really good. The only reason I even played it is because I would go online, and every time I went on Overclocked Remix, there's like 15 new Undertale music remixes.
The Undertale fandom is incredibly, they are very active. And actually, the guy that made Undertale just came out with a teaser for his next game, possibly his next game, called Deltarune, which is just an anagram of Undertale. So that just came out and looks like it's in a very similar style to Undertale as well. So that's ramped back up again because that just came out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, there's some kind of tie-in with Undertale.
Yep.
And they're encouraging people to like create sound like remixes online. I've seen DJ Cutman tweeting about it a lot. And
I wonder if there's some sort of like alternate reality game going on with that right now. That could be, you know.
Yeah. So next on my list is to beat Undertale. I don't have a lot to say about it because again, I have not even come close to beat. How long of a game is it? Do you know?
I think it's about 6 hours. It gets wild. It gets so wild. And the characters are so strong. Like the individual characters in that game are just fantastic. They really are.
Awesome. I will endeavor to play that over winter break. But yeah, one of my top 3 games, Undertale.
So you didn't order your games. We're just like saying these. You're saying these like your top 3 is what you're saying. That's kind of where you're at.
Are you going to order yours?
I could. So I very easily could order my top 3.
Well, mine's kind of auto ordered. So yeah, I'll say that's number 3.
That was number 3. Okay. So number 3 for me is Endless Space 2, which Endless Space is another game I've talked about on this show many, many years ago. It is a 4X strategy game, only it is set in space. It is set in the Endless Universe, which is a universe that there've been a couple of games that have come out in it. There's been Endless Space, there's been Endless Legend, which is another 4X game. There's been Dungeon of the Endless, which is it's kind of like a roguelike dungeon crawler game. So a couple of games have come out in this world. And the Endless Space is, like I said, it's a 4X space game, but space is really hard to make a 4X game in. It feels like it should be perfect for a 4X game. But in my experience in previous games that I've played, it's very easy for them to devolve into kind of like a war simulator, right? And I feel like Endless Space. So I feel like Endless Space does a really good job of allowing not victory conditions, but allowing progress to be made in a variety of different areas, like what you would expect from a Civilization type game. Only it's set in space, which is my favorite setting for a game. My favorite setting for any game. I'm like a sci-fi fan. I love deep space exploration, unknown. I like Star Trek. I love Star Wars and I love Star Trek, but the Star Trek style of space exploration is what I am drawn to more than the Star Wars, which is very bombastic, very, very loud, very, very in your face, full of battle, right? And Star Trek is not about that at all. Like Next Generation Star Trek is far more about diplomacy, alliance, that kind of thing. And Endless Space 2 captures that amazingly when you're talking about doing like a 4X game. So I've been playing it with a buddy of ours, and it's so good. It's so good.
Hey, thanks for the invite, John.
You don't have the game. You can't play it.
What if I got the game?
Also, you never play games at the same time I do, ever.
When do you play games?
Either at 4 a.m. or at like 7:30 to 10 o'clock at night, which is when you're getting home. That's when you're getting home.
Sometimes I'm still awake at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm right, and you know it.
The other cool thing about it is it just like any 4X game, it does have it's got a battle system. It's got a a war system, and it does have a war victory in it. But the way the ships work are you unlock modules for your ships as well as blueprints, and there's like 5 to 6 different blueprints per race, and then each ship blueprint has like, you know, anywhere from 5 to maybe 15 module slots on it. And then you've got 50 modules that you can probably unlock over the course of the game through different technologies. So and then you can just slot those modules in on the ship to make your ships kind of any way you want, right? And then different races have specific race specific modules as well. So like the types of ships that you can make and the number of different combinations of ships that you can make in order to kind of tailor make them to maybe the races that you're near, the size of the galaxy, etc. It's really cool. It is really cool. It is like it's what you want. I feel like it's what you want out of a space sim, out of a space exploration game. It really captures that feeling of exploring space.
Have you ever played Stellaris?
I haven't, but I do own it.
That captures the feeling of being in space, piloting a starship, and running a space government without having been trained on how to do any of those things, with it being exactly as complicated as doing either of those things in real life.
So very accessible. Maybe I'll try that one next.
Stellaris is impossible.
I guess I'll have to try it then. I'll have to.
And I got it for Rob from Game Life Balance Australia for a gift at some point, and he's into that stuff. Thank God. I am so glad he's enjoying it, because I got it to play, and someone's like, "Oh, it's like Civilization in space." No. I know the rules to Civilization. I know how that works. I know how to play the game with a controller.
Maybe that's why Endless Space 2 and Endless Space 2 takes everything in Endless Space. It has almost all of the exact same mechanics and just builds on them, right? In a better way. So it's just a better version of the original game. And maybe that's why I like it more than maybe I haven't really had a desire to explore Stellaris, because it feels a lot like Civ in space. It's got a very
like Civ in space.
No, I'm saying Endless Space feels like Civ in space, and I love Civ. So that's probably why I'm drawn to Endless Space. It is in the area that I most like to play in, which is sci-fi space exploration.
The zeitgeist.
Sure, that's not the right use of that word.
It is.
It is. You're right.
All right.
So yeah, that's my number 3.
Do you want to do your number 2, or do you want me to do my number 2?
2 in a row. That doesn't feel fair.
Well, you already did 2 runner-ups in a row.
Well, I did 2 runner-ups because I couldn't decide between the 2 of those games. I think it's your turn to give us your number 2. Number 2.
Wouldn't it be funny?
Number 2.
If the listener is taking a number 2 while listening to you say number 2 over and over.
That seems like a bad. I don't know. I've never listened to a podcast in the bathroom. Is that a good place for it?
Oh yeah. What? Are you serious?
I'm serious. Yeah.
What? Who doesn't what?
I mean, we all bring our phones in the bathroom and like get poop all over our phones, right? But no, I don't like, because if you're in like a public restroom, you can't be listening to. What are you doing? You listening to music?
Public restroom or a private restroom. If I'm like taking a shower, I will put on my podcast and I'll just like
pooping in the shower.
When I'm pooping in the shower, I'm taking a hot dump in my bathtub and covering myself and it with water. That is when I listen mostly to this show. Actually, that's how that works.
All right,
there you go. Fine. My number 2 starts with the number 2. It's called 20XX. You ever heard of it?
I'll just start the number 2. That's right. I've wanted you to tell me about this game for months.
I've wanted to talk about it for months, actually. So 20XX, man, I have so much to say about this game because because
it's a good game.
Well,
because it's your number 2 game of the year.
There are 3 games I played this year that heavily borrow from or are inspired by other video games. And they each do so to a varying degree of success. My number one game of the year actually
which we'll get to,
does it with the most success. And I think a 20XX is a close second. And then the third game is called Timespinner, which is a game I kickstarted and was very disappointing. Excuse me. But I would love to do like a special episode where I kind of like wrap up all three. I just won't have time to do that until 2029. So there you are. But 20XX is a roguelike. So every time you play, the stages are built differently. The stages are procedurally built or generated or whatever. But it's a 2D platformer in the style of Mega Man X. And it borrows a lot of elements from Mega Man X. You can jump on walls and climb up walls that way. You get different weapon power-ups. You have a dash. Picture a fully powered up X in the original Mega Man X. So you've got your buster you can charge. You've got your dash. All those things. That is what you start as in this game. And it's also co-op multiplayer. And you can do online co-op, which I've never done. And you can also do local co-op. And when Icebag John, Russian John, depends on, whatever. He's been on the show. Yeah, it's a thing. When Russian John's been on the show, every time he comes over to my place, we play this game. We have not beaten it yet. Our friend Blake has beaten it on single player, and he's not that good at video games, so I'm sure it's easier on single player. But John and I have gotten to the final boss several times, but it's really, really hard. But what's good about the game is Mega Man X is a fun game series, right? Like the Mega Man X series is phenomenal. And this game is about as tight gameplay-wise. It has a lot of things in common. A lot of the enemies are similar, but very different designs. They change up the level design. It's a lot of platforming. There's always bottomless pits. You're always navigating in some sky planet area or in like a lava factory.
Like multiple bosses too, like a Mega Man game?
Oh, yeah. There's and I don't know how many. There's probably 9 or 10. And you pick up all these power-ups along the way, but you can vary your run so dramatically, which is so cool. For example, when you beat a boss, you can choose one of a few different power-ups after. You can choose increase your max health, increase your max special weapon energy, or get that boss's weapon. So you can actually go through the game, and we did this for a long time without even picking up the boss's weapons. We just wanted better max health. We didn't even use that. Then we discovered that some of the special weapons are just totally OP, and they'll crush bosses in like a second. And some have shields that generate around you, like a Woodman from Mega Man 2, and some have the shots that split into different places. Almost all the weapons you've probably seen in a Mega Man game in some form. And all the bosses are interesting variants. Like there is basically a chill penguin. I think he's actually called Frostbeak. And his sprites, the character, is designed like a penguin that has some of the same moves as Chill Penguin, but it doesn't rip off Mega Man X. It's not like you feel like you're just playing a shoddy remake. It feels like you're playing an expanded idea of what the Mega Man X series should be. And I really like it because it's done so well and it has its own personality, and it's very challenging. There's runs where we have died on the 4th or 5th level. And it takes probably 30 to 45 minutes for a full run, depending on when we get destroyed. But it's just really fun. And if you die, then the other player has to get to a certain point before you can revive the other player. It's just a really tight, solid game. It's just a lot of fun.
And there's no advancement in between runs, right? I mean, it's just run starts, run ends. You don't carry over power in between runs?
You don't. You can purchase some permanent advancements, like at the beginning of stage 3, this cat robot appears and will give you a little power up. Now, those are random, but yeah, for the most part, you restart. You also, over time, unlock better. So there are power-ups in each level that you can buy at shops for these nuts that you pick up in the level. And you also get these like credits at the end of every run. You can use the credits to buy new items that will randomly show up.
Yeah, it's like a standard roguelike then.
Yeah, very standard roguelike. They also have a daily challenge, a weekly challenge run, a boss run, lots of different modes. They have a couple DLC characters that we've read aren't like that impressive, so we didn't get any DLC. But it's just great. It's just a really fun, high energy game. And like you, I really like, what did you call them?
The run-based games. Like they're The roguelikes or roguelites or run-based games.
Yeah, I like those. And 20XX, I recommend really highly. Like, it's still really fun. I want to keep playing it with John until we freaking beat it. But yeah, it is. And the challenge is real. The challenge is, it's nice to have that high level of, because a roguelike should, I think the classic roguelike feel is like, you're probably not going to win most of the time.
Right. And, I'll be honest, like it's the perfect style of game for a parent, because you may get like 30 to 45 minutes of uninterrupted playtime at a time if you're lucky per day, right? Like sometimes I get a little more than that, but that's what I can maybe count on. And so you can do a whole run. You feel like you played a whole game if you do a full run. And then when a game also, and I get to talk about this a little later, but then when a game also allows you to advance your characters or advance like the story in between those runs, well, then you always feel like you're accomplishing something. And that's really nice.
Yeah, for sure. So 20XX, check it out. It's on sale on Steam all the time. I still don't even own it. I just use John just logs into his Steam account when he comes over, and it's on my computer. But
yeah, you've talked about it before. I really need to try it because it sounds really cool.
Yeah. If I ever see you again, we can play a local co-op. Should be fun.
I'm sure we will see each other again next in a month and a half, in 5 months when we record again. My number two.
Are you taking a number 2 right now?
My number 2 is Final Fantasy XII: A Zodiac Age.
What?
It's so good. It is so good. Game. Okay, I have talked, and I am an unabashed Final Fantasy fan. You and I both are. We are apologists. We through many flaws in that series, we are willing to look past a lot of them to claim that we really like those games. I have no problem saying that I am one of those. I have no problem saying that I'm an apologist for Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy XII: Zodiac Age is with slight hesitation, only slight though, I say it is my favorite Final Fantasy game of all of them. It is tremendous.
For the 9?
Yes, it is tremendous. It's scope, and keep in mind, I just played all of them again, all of them but 15. So, and 6, which we're eventually going to play, which is a great game, obviously. It's scope. So Final Fantasy XII scope, and they didn't like change anything about the story, but I kind of forgot just how big of a game Final Fantasy XII is. But I forgot how like magical that world feels. Like the story itself is not great. It's mediocre. It is Star Wars. The story is very much Star Wars. There's an evil empire. You have to go. You're like a small, scrappy band of rebels literally led by like the princess of the former empire, and your task is to go kill this invading empire. Right? Like it is Star Wars. However, the world, in my experience with all Final Fantasy games, is by far the most like alive feeling world. It feels the most like a real place than any other Final Fantasy game. It's completely open. You can go from like the city of Rabanastre where it starts, and you can just walk. You can just walk through deserts, through jungles. You can go like as far as you want. It feels like a fully connected world. And so what that ends up doing is it makes the game just feel massive and interesting. It feels like there's always something in like every twist and turn of every place that you go. And it always rewards you. In Zodiac Age, they changed a couple of things. They didn't change the story at all, but they changed how treasure worked. Because in the original base game of Final Fantasy XII, treasure was randomized. It was a weird thing. You would open a treasure at one point in time and it would be one thing. And if you came back at like a different time, or if the stars aligned correctly, you'd come back and you might get like a rare piece of equipment. It was a really weird system. I don't exactly know what they were going for with it. It didn't work. It failed. It was not good. They changed that. They completely overhauled that. There's a slight randomness with the system now. However, there are static chests where like Hastega is a spell that you're going to want for your party that spawns in one chest in one dungeon, and you have to find it there. So you always know it's going to be there when you go, right? When you go there. So it makes it so that it's much more reliable in terms of like the best equipment, the best spells, that type of thing. And it makes it easier to plan out your party. The other thing it did was the license board was a system in the original base game where it was just a big old board and you got points for killing stuff, and you would use those points to unlock the ability to use items. You would buy the license to use items. Well, the board was huge. It was enormous. And if you didn't build your character down like a specific path, you could find yourself not able to use the equipment that you were like getting to in the game, and then being underpowered to continue with the game without grinding out stuff. So in the Zodiac age, they use this job system where eventually at a point in the game, you pick 2 character classes for each character, and the license board is specific to that character class. And they can only use a specific types of weapons, specific spell types. And so it focuses them. It focuses your characters, and it makes them far more individual. So there's 12 character classes and 6 characters. Each character gets 2 classes.
So this isn't just a re-release. They like overhauled it.
Overhauled it completely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just, and they did some other smart things. There's a 2x and a 4x option, which when playing the game, which literally just speeds the game up 2 times and 4 times. There's some really like big deserts that take a very long time to walk across. You can just speed it up to 2x and just fly across the desert, right? Or 4x, fly across the desert. Or if you're trying to run through a like a dungeon that you need to go through to get to another area that you've been through 3 times, right? You can run through it at 4x, which is a great way to get through those areas. And they're using that concession because the game came out in what, 2006 or 2004. So the game is an old game, and it uses some old game design, and it's a smart way to bypass that. And the other thing I did this time, which I had not done the first time that I played that game, was I did everything but like the hardest boss in the game, which has like 200 health bars or something like that.
Yeah, it's got like 2 million hit points or something.
Outrageous.
Totally
yeah, that's the only thing I didn't do. But even like the second hardest boss I beat, and I realized just how much content they put in that game. I mean, it is insane. It is insane. By doing all of the hunts, it's insane how much they have in that game. And it made me really appreciate that game even more than I already did.
So it sounds awesome. I legitimately actually kind of want to play it because of what you just said. But like, who wants to do all the hunts? I mean, really?
The hunts are great, and they only get better. They start off kind of boring, but then as you go on, and they kind of like they kind of like modify some of the way that you would normally play the game. They get more and more interesting. And like, I was super excited to fight Gilgamesh again because he's hilarious in that game, like he always is. And he was awesome. It was fun to do that again. But then going past that and doing some of the more complicated hunts that I hadn't done the first time that I played it, that game is tremendous. It is tremendous. It is my favorite Final Fantasy game.
I will say there's a good fair amount of music I didn't like from it, but there's some good music in that game too.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And the voice acting is mediocre, but the characters, other than your main 2 Van, who's like the we'll call him the main protagonist, but really there's 6 protagonists, and Penelo, who is just kind of nothing. They're just kind of vagrants, right? Like, they're not interesting, but everybody else is interesting.
Ash is interesting.
Yes, Ash is interesting. Ash is far more interesting than I think you remember.
Probably. Balthier is interesting. I'll give you that.
I mean, he's roguish, he's funny, he's fun, but he's also a judge's son, right? Like, I agree with you. He's pretty they're all awesome except for really Van and Penelo.
Well, he's the leading man.
He is the leading man.
Isn't there some generic guard you have in your party too?
Bosch? Bosch is not a generic guard.
The Stampede?
Bosch is the guy with that has a twin.
Oh, Bosch. Yeah.
Bosch. Yeah.
Like I said, I agree with your sentiments about the horrible storyline. If I go back into it,
I definitely didn't say it was horrible. I said it was mediocre. It was fine.
I think it's horrible. Look, Star Wars, you knew who Darth Vader was. He was the guy in the black helmet. I don't remember a single character from Final Fantasy XII other than the 5 of the protagonists.
I mean, that's fair. Like, I think the story is not that good. I agree.
No. But everything you said about the world, I mean, I do very vividly remember running around the desert and running around a forest where I wasn't supposed to be yet, and getting killed because you're like fighting way high level stuff. And there's definitely a level of immersion. Like I don't want to crap on the game too much. From what you said about the changes they made, I mean, another frustrating thing was like in past Final Fantasy games, you would have, let's say, 6 to 8 main cast characters. You could have 3 in a party at a time, maybe 4. And at some point in the game, you would be forced to use certain characters. That does not happen one single time in Final Fantasy XII. You can literally use the same 3 characters the entire game and never have to swap them out, which is fine, but I didn't know that. And I found that very annoying when I got to the end of the game and I had been swapping in and out characters to like level them up. And I'm like, why did I do that? It's a complete, like you literally just pick 3, and because they're not unique in any way, they're completely interchangeable, right? Other than like maybe the limit break.
Well, in the original version of the game, right?
The original version. So it sounds like from what you're saying, they fixed the like 2 gameplay things that really bothered me, and it's just a lot better. So no, I'm tempted to play it. Did you play it on PS4 or Steam?
I played it on Steam.
How was the music?
Awesome.
Because I worry that about like them re-synthesizing some of the music and it being weird.
No, it sounded great.
All right, I'm a purist when it comes to Final Fantasy music.
No, I understand that.
Like I won't play Final Fantasy VII on Steam because like God no.
I think I want to say they orchestrated it in the remake.
Okay, perfect. I'm down. I'm sold. Yeah. Great, cool. Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age. Check it out.
Oh, it's so good.
And wasn't it on sale for like $4 the other day?
No, I think the lowest it's been is 20.
No, you retweeted something and it was like, this is a ridiculous price, and it was super low. It was single digits.
That might have been for, maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe it was. I would check for it on like the winter sale. Do it. Look at the Christmas sale this year, on Steam and see. It's awesome. That game's so good.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to, we both had the number 2 in our number 2 game, 20XX and Final Fantasy 1-2.
Took a number 2 during my number 2 game. That's right.
Oh, you also had Endless Space 2 in your number 3. So
in my number 2. Yep.
Does that mean your number 1's going to have a number 2, number 3?
My number 2 game is going to be next. That's going to be the next thing I talk about.
So what's your favorite game of the year? Or do you want me just to go?
You want me to go?
We're taking, I don't know, whatever.
All right. So we're going to take a number 1.
Who's taking the number 1?
You're going to take a number 1.
Okay. The best, most impressive, incredible game I played probably this year is a little game called Axiom Verge.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
It is really good. So remember when I said that certain games borrow elements from other games and some do it better than others and some improve upon them and some don't so much?
Sure.
To me,
you said that was early in this episode. You said that. I was listening to you.
Yes, callback. Axiom Verge to me is what you get when you take the rough concept of a game. It's a Metroidvania. If you don't know what a Metroidvania is, then you shouldn't be listening to us. It's just like Castlevania Symphony of the Night or Super Metroid, where you move around. There's a big map. All the areas are connected, and you have to figure out what unlocks what at what time, and it's great fun. Earlier this year on an episode of our show, I said, is Super Metroid the perfect game? Because I think that structurally, other than one minor gameplay quirk that you didn't like about the jumping, it may be, I think, in my mind, a perfect game in many ways. And I think Axiom Verge is as close to that as you can possibly get, if not even better. Like there's hardly words. The story is basically there's some kind of accident in your lab and you're teleported into this world that doesn't make any sense. And it's very, very organic looking. All of the walls are pulsating. All of the enemies have this like biological feel to them,
yeah, you feel like you're in like a massive creature. Like the world is like a giant creature of some kind.
Yeah, some of the textures look like kind of red blood cells swimming around, or even like little sperm in jars or whatever. And it just has this really like gory feel, but not at all that. It's hard to even describe.
You're trying to avoid using the word visceral, aren't you? But visceral, it's visceral. It's visceral.
Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to avoid it. I couldn't remember it. It's a very visceral, feel. It's the ambiance is great. They set you up with a little hook of a story, which is really cool. But they don't overdo the dialogue. So a mistake that a lot of side-scrolling games make is overdoing dialogue. Because if I'm running left and right trying to get places and kill things, I don't want to stop every 10 feet and have some random dialogue box pop up. But they sprinkle in a handful throughout the game. And it's probably 6 to 8 hours for my first run.
Yeah, my thing is I really like the feeling of isolation that Metroidvanias sometimes convey. Like Super Metroid is the most isolation, right? Because you literally don't see a single other friendly face other than those animals that can't really help you. But generally it's so isolating. And in Axiom Verge, there's no other humans. You find this race of beings there, but they don't necessarily feel benevolent necessarily. Like they kind of feel like they're in it for themselves. And they kind of made me feel like I was a tool for them, right?
You almost have kind of an uneasy feeling the entire time.
The entire game, yeah.
I would also equate it with Risk of Rain, which has been one of our favorite games, both of us, for a long time, with that feel of isolation. And they do it in an 8-bit graphic style, and this is what really is phenomenal to me.
Oh, keep in mind, this was, just an aside, this was literally one dude that did this entire game, including the music.
Yeah,
this was insane. A single dude. And he has a really interesting story. He made this game because his kid has a chronic illness that he's like trying to make money for, and he's got a very interesting story.
Well, since he's the only person that worked on it, I'm guessing he has a lot of money, because I've seen this on a lot of top games lists.
Yeah. I mean, so anyway, yeah, you can continue.
Which is good. I mean, I didn't know that part of the story, so I am sorry to hear that. But I would imagine this guy has made a lot of money off this game because it's so good. And I played it on the Switch. I paid almost full price for the Nintendo Switch. I was going on a trip and I asked our friends, where should I get Axiom Verge or Hollow Knight? Axiom Verge was on sale for like 30 cents off or something, and I was like, it's on sale. But yeah, it's like I can't even describe fully just the level of immersion. And with this 8-bit graphic style, what he does with it is, in NES games, how sometimes a pixel will be out of place, not a pixel, but maybe parts of pixels will be out of place.
There's some like graphical glitching that happens a lot of times in NES games, right?
Yeah, like a background texture copies itself over something else, and it's not totally smooth. So Axiom Verge does that on purpose, but it also incorporates it into the gameplay. So you'll get like a ray that you aim at a bunch of bricks, and it literally kind of glitches out that part of the game. So it changes the textures, and you can now pass through walls, and it does so in like a glitchy way, and it like flashes in and out. Basically, it looks like a broken Nintendo game, but it's seamlessly executed. And it's just I cannot remember the last time I played a game and felt the entire way through, this is a work of art. Like this is a game that you could play and it makes you feel something. It makes you feel a feeling. The music works, the graphics work, the gameplay works. Every element is tied together thematically in a consistent way to convey one type of feeling that leaves you a little bit discombobulated and a little uneasy, and at the same time is supremely fun, has a great difficulty curve. It's not too hard. You definitely die sometimes. It is very close. I give it a 10. I definitely give it a perfect 10. Like I don't I don't have any complaints about this game. There was nothing about it that felt unsatisfying, except one time I got lost and there was like a texture that I didn't realize you could just walk through. It was a little annoying. I looked up an FAQ because we're now old and don't have time to just wander maps over and over again. But other than that, if I played through it again, like, oh my God, just the abilities you get, the lab coats you get, and nothing about it feels like a ripoff of any Metroid game or any Castlevania game. It's just its own unique thing. And the fact that one guy did it, when I got to the credits, it blew my mind. So yeah.
The crazy part is that you probably didn't see some of the optional weapons that are pretty well hidden. I would imagine you didn't find them unless you like looked at an FAQ to find them.
I probably found a lot of I wandered a lot and ended up getting a ton of, and every time I got a weapon, I'm like, it's not where I'm supposed to go. I just kept getting weapons. So I got a lot of them.
There's also this, there's like I don't know if they're challenge stages. They're things that I didn't even find. I only read about this after the fact, but they're like these like special out of the way hidden secrets that exist in that game too, that you can sort of stumble upon. I think you're supposed to like stumble upon at least one of them to know that they're there and then find the rest of them. I didn't find any of them, but they're like alternate worlds basically within this world that you kind of glitch into. So it's got this whole other thing too. That
is super cool.
I never got to see. Yeah, that game is awesome. And to be honest, one of the things that I liked the most about it was the music. And you didn't mention that, but the music of that game is eerie and a little spooky, and like really eclectic in these really weird ways. It's kind of like dirty. It feels dirty. It's really, that music, I've listened to that soundtrack before by itself. I mean, and I don't do that a lot with games anymore, but I have definitely put on the Axiom Verge soundtrack and listen to that thing start to finish because it's got some really, really great music.
Yeah. As a side bonus, I'm really excited for Games Done Quick now because they often have a run for Axiom Verge, and the developer had speedrunners in mind. There's an entire mode on the title screen called speedrun mode, and it keeps a clock and keeps a score and everything, and it's specifically designed to kind of like help speedrunners track their progress when they're speedrunning the game. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that. But like I said, I briefly mentioned the music because everything ties together. Like I said, the music, the graphics, the gameplay, it all is just so like, it's so right. Everything about it fits the right way. It is one of the most impressive games I have ever played. And I cannot recommend it highly enough. So Axiom Verge, and it's on Switch, it's on Steam.
It's on everything.
It's on everything, yeah.
It's on everything but iOS, probably.
Yeah. There was one part, there's a like a decoder you get in your menu screen, and you can put in 10 characters, like type them in to get power-ups and different things. So I did find one area where you had to enter the code when you had to decipher a code from a note you find somewhere and then use it in a room to like make a piece of wall disappear. And I don't remember how I figured out how to do it, but I just did, and I tried it, and like this whole chunk of wall disappeared, and I ran through this wall, and it felt like the coolest thing ever. But the first thing I did with that decoder is I punched in Justin Bailey, because of course I did. Justin Bailey is the code that you would use in the original Metroid to have Samus run around in her bathing suit. A Bailey is a word for a bathing suit. Look at that knowledge. And I was like, well, it's a Metroidvania. Justin Bailey fits. What'll happen? And you literally run around in your lab coat with no pants on. So it just takes away the.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I just did. I just guessed. I'm like, I wonder what'll happen. And then like, boom. Yeah. And I couldn't figure out. I was like, what's different? And then I'm like, oh, he's not wearing pants. He's just wearing underwear and has his lab coat on. So yeah, man, Axiom Verge. I'm glad you've played it. It crushes. Now I want to hear what your favorite game was.
So my favorite game, I had mentioned it previously in the past couple of months, but my favorite game is another run-based game that the early access technically came out last year, and I played 100 hours of early access to this game, and then I stopped playing it for about 6 months before the regular game came out. It was it's Dead Cells, which we have definitely talked about. Again, another game we've talked about on the show before, but I went dark on it, right? Like I said, I played it for like 100 hours, and it's an action platformer that has the tightest controls of any game that I've ever played. And so it's a run-based game, like we've talked about. You are unlocking items that can appear later in the run. You find blueprints for items, and you're collecting cells from fallen enemies. And then in between levels, you can like contribute cells towards unlocking the blueprints that you have found over the course of your runs. Once you unlock the item, it can occasionally show up in your run, right? And then there are 3 different times during the course of an entire run where you can upgrade the actual like map itself permanently. So there's ways to do like permanent upgrades, and then there's ways to unlock other items that you may see later. And there's like 120 items. But the thing that makes this the best game that I played this year is simply the feel of the game. It could have other skins on it. So the skin, the appearance of the game is this kind of cartoony fake 16-bit look. I mean, it's kind of grainy a little bit, but it's not actually 16-bit, right? Because it's never actually that. It's just kind of aping on that. It harkens back to that. So it's got like that 16-bit look to it. Really colorful. And it takes place in like the dungeon of a castle, and you're working your way through the castle, and you are literally like a group of cells. Like you are a gross pile of cells that finds their way to a dead body that inhabits this dead body, and that's what you're using to work through the castle. It's got this really wacky sense of humor. Like you'll knock on a door and there'll be somebody behind it that's like, "Hey, get me out of here." There's like water coming in, and you'll knock on the door again, and then they just won't answer, and your guy will just like shrug his shoulders like, eh. Or there'll be another one that's, you'll knock on the door and the guy's like, "There's something on my leg. This thing's on my leg. It's getting off my leg." And then you'll just see it scream, and then your main character will just give a big thumbs up, like a dumb, doofy thumbs up. So it's got this really like wacky sense of humor. So it could have had any skin on it, but the feel of the game, of the action platforming, is the reason why this game is number 1. Because I have never played a game where... So I took a bunch of time off, like I said. I got pretty good at the game by the time I had gotten through it last summer. I never completed a run. I never beat the last boss ever in that 100 hours. So I came back to it and I was very clearly rusty. I was very clearly not as good at the game. And it was very apparent because I started playing it again after taking so much time off. And I couldn't get past, like the 4th stage of 10, right? But once I kind of settled back into it again and got a feeling for the timing of things and the controls, you can roll cancel. You can cancel out of any movement by either attacking or rolling. So if you want to try to dodge something, you can do it at any time. You can use a shield if you pick up a shield at any time to cancel an action, right? So it gives you complete control over yourself. And so if you make a mistake, like if you die, it feels very clearly your fault. It never feels like you had gotten cheap shot by anything in this game. And just because of that feeling of control over it, and because you're constantly unlocking new things, and there are so many items that the build that you end up with is very, very different every time you play the game. So you have 4 items total that you can have, and when you have this many combinations of items, you're not, you find maybe 5 items each level. So you can never bank on finding your favorite thing. And each of those items has different levels that increase depending on the stage that you're at. So by the end of the game, you have to start using the higher level items. You can't just hang on to something and continue to use it, even though it's like your favorite weapon that you use. You have to use the later items that you find and the more upgraded items that you find. So it forces creativity in a way that's really interesting. Just because you have to find the synergies between the items that are available to you from what's unlocked. When you finally beat it, were you like, all right, I'm done with this game? I did beat it for the first time. I haven't gone back to it since. I 100% will. I needed a break from it at the time because I had played only that game for like 30 straight hours of gaming when I finally beat it, because I was reaching the last boss consistently. And that's also not how you know that like you're getting better at the game, is because I couldn't get to like the second boss when I picked it back up again. But I was reaching the last boss on almost every single run by the time I finally beat it.
That's awesome.
So,
what's the gameplay like?
it looks like a Metroidvania, right? So it had, some levels have verticality, some levels are just very horizontal. There are monsters that pop up that you can usually, you either going to have melee weapons or ranged weapons. You're going to have tools on your R and L triggers that you use. They're like special powers that you find, and you just are killing things. And you're moving through the level to try to find the end of the level, and there's multiple exits, so there's multiple full paths to the game.
It's like
kind of keep it fresh.
Would you compare it to Rogue Legacy, but instead of finding new areas, you just find exits?
So it is, except that there aren't really permanent upgrades. Rogue Legacy was, you'd do a run and you'd come back and spend all your money, and your air would be stronger the next time that you ran it.
Right.
Over and over and over again, you would do that. You start off at square one in this game. Your entire build at the end of the game is based on what items you find and what upgrade you take, because there's these scrolls that upgrade your various abilities. You've got three different abilities. You've got basically like strength, cunning, and like vitality. And each of the items has one of those attributes. And so if you level up that portion of your character, it levels up the damage and effectiveness of any of the weapons and items that you find in that category. And then some weapons have two of those three categories. So depending on what you level up when you find these scrolls that level you up, and what items you find, determines at the end of the game what kind of build you have.
Got it.
So
cool.
you may have a strength run one game. I think I had pretty much always run with a tactics. That's where I found my most success. But I ended up finding these really good strength-based weapons on the run that I won. And I generally was not playing strength ever when I played through it. So, but that just happens to be what the best weapons that I found, and that happens to be how I won, finally beat that game.
Are there multiplayer options?
No multiplayer options. There is a streamer option that they added, which is pretty interesting, where the streamer takes on the role of like a helper and determines when items get used on you. It's interesting. From what I hear, it's actually really well done.
So like a Mario Kart Double Dash, where one person steers and the other person uses the items?
A little bit, yeah. Except the only item I think they can use is the health potion. So they can choose to heal you or choose to not heal you. You lose the ability to do that yourself.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. But no like multiplayer part of that game. They do have daily runs that they added. They changed. So what changed from the early access to the full release of the game was really significant. Like, the game looked completely different when I came back to it. Monster models were different. The way you leveled up your attributes was different, because they didn't even have the three set attribute types, or the items didn't fit into an attribute type when I first started playing that game. So when I came back to it, it felt like a totally different game. It's really good. It is excellent.
All right.
It is an excellent game.
I will add Dead Cells to the list. Sounds like it's worth it.
Everybody should play Dead Cells. It's also on the Switch.
All right. Well, and that brings us to our number 0 game of 2018. Our
number 0.
Our favorite game by far, unilaterally between me and John, is Smash Brothers Ultimate. Let me tell you about this game. You can play as a plant.
There was a very missed opportunity there. You should have said it was Final Fantasy XIII.
God.
Or was it 13-2? It was 13-2, right?
It doesn't matter.
You should have said it was Final Fantasy 13 too.
I just saw something on Lightning Returns that made me want to play it again.
That was a weird, good game.
But really good game.
It was weird, but really good. It was it was like not a Final Fantasy game, but it was super weird. It was a weird game.
Very weird game. Tremendously weird.
We always end up with Final Fantasy, don't we?
Always no Final Fantasy. Mad respect.
Hey, isn't Noctis a character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate?
Yeah, probably. When are you gonna play 15?
I have to buy it first. And I feel so unmotivated to buy it because nobody is excited about it. Nobody's excited about that game, so it makes me not excited about that game.
I could lend you my PlayStation 4 because I downloaded it.
I was going to say, I have a PlayStation 4. You don't need to lend me No, you don't need to lend me your PlayStation 4. I can spend the $20 to buy it when it goes on sale again for Christmas. It's hard to get excited about it because nobody's excited about it.
You should be excited. Dude, we've been over this. I played the original release that was unfinished and
totally. You say it was like a trailer park or something? I don't know.
I called it Final Fantasy set in a trailer park. I was not hot on it. Everyone in the Final Fantasy subreddit, although they're all fanboys, of course, has insisted, oh, they patched it up. It's all better now. There's all these different modes and all these things. I don't know, man. I don't know. You're going to be, what you end up playing, you have to keep in mind it is different significantly than what I...
It will complete the full playthrough of Final Fantasy games for me when I get to it.
Yeah.
So I should.
Aren't you at it? You just played...
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It'll complete the whole thing.
All right. Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up in a second. Before we do that, I should tell you that you should come, you should come chat with the Gonna Geek Network podcast hosts and listeners on our new Discord server. I am on this.
I'm on it too.
Is on it, but I haven't seen you post anything.
Wait a minute, but maybe I need to enact updates.
I don't know. There's a channel for every Gonna Geek show, including ours, as well as some general channels for all of your geeky chat needs. Find the server at gonnageek.com/discord. You may also find a link in our show notes, but I can't guarantee that. Also, I would like to say on the Gonna Geek Network, there's another show called Game Life Balance Australia, which is in no way related to Game Life Balance US whatsoever. There is no association. I don't know who these people are or where they came from. I look the other way. This week, the boys discuss a game from one of their favorite franchises, Bubble Symphony, because AC just finds games that no one's ever heard of. No surprises here. AC and Rob speak glowingly about a fun little arcade game about dragons that blow bubbles. What's not to like? I don't know.
Isn't that Bubble Bobble? That's Bubble Bobble.
That's what I thought. The episode, by the way, is called episode 73, Michael Bublé Symphony. So there's that. Also, Rob talks a bit about Red Dead Redemption 2, which I have only seen talked about on South Park. And they probably make some hilarious jokes and bring up Scatman John or Jones or whatever his name was, that dead guy they made fun of for a whole episode. And they also probably, I don't know, make fun of Canberra. I'll just assume. I'm actually a few episodes behind for the first time in a very long time. I was all about GLB Australia until recently. I've been too many. My podcast diet doesn't feel like a diet. It just feels like I'm always busy and behind everything all the time.
I've only subscribed to like four different podcasts, and I can barely keep up with those. So I don't know how you probably keep up with the 13 that you're probably subscribed to.
Yeah, no, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, Jesus. 21, 24, 27, 30, like 37. 10 of them I don't really listen to. Just like probably like 25, 20 to 25-ish.
Yeah, there's no way that you listen to all those.
No, there's no way. No, there's some that I barely listen to at all. But anyway, ours is the best on my... I don't listen to ours.
I just listen to ours over and over again.
I know. That's fine. So this will be our last podcast of 2018. We will be back in early 2019, and we will be back on the SNES Classic reviews. Longtime listeners may remember that John and I both have an SNES Classic. We are playing through all the Super Nintendo games on the thing at the same time and reviewing them together, telling you how well they hold up, what nostalgia value they have, whether and why you should play them. And that's been a really fun project. The current game we're supposed to be playing, I believe,
Punch Out, right?
Punch Out, yeah.
It's Super Punch Outs.
Yeah, so at the beginning of 2019, Super Punch Out will be the first game that we review. And then we will try to do a bi-weekly release of this podcast, depending on my workload and whether we hire more employees to help me with my day job, maybe we will do it in every 3-week release schedule, but I almost guarantee we will have a regularly released schedule in 2019.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it might be your fault this time if we don't. I think I'm pretty settled in now.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was always your fault. That's how I remember it.
Is it?
Everybody, I just want to say...
also, shout out to American Liberty for watching our live stream. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Also, to everybody else, thank you for listening to the Game Life Balance U.S. podcast, the American edition of the Game Life Balance podcast. If you had fun, then please tell one friend about our podcast. That is all we ask. You can learn more about Game Life Balance, including our sister show in Australia. It shows me up every time at gamelifebalance.us. Or check out Game Life Balance and lots of other geeky shows on Gonna Geek Network at gonnageek.com. We did it. We wrapped up the year.
Who did it?
I said we did it.
And Merry Christmas to you, listener. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks for...
Merry Christmas,
We
listener.
took it back, everybody. We did it. Congratulations.
Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
We took it
Celebrate your Merry Christmas.
Christmas, yeah.
And have a Happy New Year, a Happy Thanksgiving, but mostly a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And Christmas.
And January.
Have a happy January. People don't say that.
They might. They might.